whispering vault beneath the kingdom. It is said that beneath the dust of an old kingdom, where broken stones cradle the memories of forgotten kings, there lies a door that has not heard a single footstep for 1,000 lifetimes. Travelers speak of it only in fragments, a sealed entrance buried under drifting sand and silence, marked with constellations that have never belonged to any known sky. Whispers tell us that the door leads to an observatory carved into the bones of the earth itself, a chamber where ancient astronomers once listened to the breath of the stars. On nights when the moon rises low and amber, the wind moves in a strange rhythm across the ruined palace above. The stones seem to shift as though inhaling, and if one listens closely, beneath the sigh of sand and the slow hum of darkness, a faint murmur can be sensed, a small, trembling sound like the echo of memory awakening. We begin here at the threshold of that sealed door, touched by shadows and starlight long extinguished. Its surface is smooth, colder than the surrounding stone, as if it has slept untouched by time. Carvings spiral outward from its center like oceanic currents, frozen in rock constellations of unfamiliar geometry, star-marked patterns that weave into symbols too ancient to name. These shapes do not shine, yet beneath the silence they seem to glow faintly, like the last breath of a dying ember. Some believe the constellations represent a sky that once existed, a forgotten firmament lost in some primordial shift. Others whisper that they mark a sky that was never meant to be seen by human eyes, a celestial map belonging only to dreams. And so, with a slow breath, we step into the waiting dark beyond the sealed door. The descent is quiet. The air grows cooler, touched by the softness of stone that has not felt sunlight for centuries. The world above fades with each step downward, replaced by a deep stillness that holds itself like a ritual. The walls narrow gently, guiding the listener into a long, spiraling path carved with delicate grooves. These grooves shimmer faintly, as if recalling the fingertips of the astronomers who once traced them while murmuring to the dark. It is said those astronomer priests believed the universe spoke in veiled rhythms, not through blazing comets or thunderous skies, but through small, sacred silences. Their observatory was not built to measure celestial events, but to listen to them, to hear the soft notes between the stars. Downward we continue, drifting as though carried in the breath of time itself. There is no flame here, no torchlight to guide the way. And yet, a dim radiance seems to pulse from the very walls. Not light, exactly. More a gentle awareness, as if the stone remembers illumination and shares the ghost of its memory. Eventually, the spiral walkway widens into a chamber shaped like a vast, hollow shell. The architecture curves with an organic reverence, echoing the inner spiral of a conch or the slow whirl of a galaxy. The sounds here deepen, softening with each exhale. A person standing in this room would find their breath moving in harmony with the ancient stones. At the heart of this hidden vault lies the circular observatory. Its ceiling rises into a dome carved from a single colossal piece of crystalline stone. The surface is etched with a map, a celestial chart of a sky once observed, or perhaps only imagined. Its stars are small depressions filled with crushed minerals that gleam faintly, responding to the slightest whisper. Some believe the dome was created to reflect the heavens, as they truly were before the shifting of ages. Others say it is a representation of an ideal sky, a universe perfected by the dream of its makers. Beneath this dome sits a stone disk the size of a shallow lake. Its surface is polished smooth, reflecting not the listener's face, but the faint illusion of distant stars. The slightest sound, a sigh, a murmur, a quiet thought forming seems to ripple across it. The astronomer priests called this mirror the breath of the void. It was not meant to show the sky above, but the cosmos within. Imagine them long ago, robed in dust-colored cloth, standing around the stone disk in silent circles, not speaking, not moving quickly, each inhalation an offering, each exhalation a question. They believed that within the human chest was an echo of the universe, a constellation of memories, desires, and forgotten dreams that mirrored the heavens themselves. And by listening to their own breath, reflected and shaped by the stone, they could glimpse the truths hidden in the spaces between stars. Whispers tell us the vault was carved during a time of quiet upheaval. The palace above was crumbling, kingdoms rising and falling like tides. Yet these astronomers sought nothing of power or rule. They built downward, not upward, believing that wisdom grew in silence, not in proclamation. By turning away from the sky's outward brightness and descending into the cool earth, they hoped to hear the soft music of creation, the quiet pulse that binds all things. Standing within the whispering vault, one feels this intention everywhere. The chamber responds not to light, but to presence. Footsteps leave no echo, yet thoughts ripple faintly across the dome. There's a sense that the vault is not empty. Rather, it is listening. Some believe the observatory awakened only when approached in reverence, when a visitor entered with a mind still enough to feel the tremble of the unseen. Others say the vault remains half asleep, even now, waiting for a breath gentle enough to stir the ancient patterns once more. And so the story deepens as we wander through this sacred chamber. Along the curved walls lie carvings of the astronomers themselves, not portraits, but symbolic impressions. Silhouettes shaped from starlight, arms raised toward an invisible horizon, spirals emerging from their chests. In some places, the carvings fade into nothing, as though dissolving into dust mixture. It is unclear whether this was erosion or intention. Near the outer edge of the chamber, fragments of ancient manuscripts lie encased in stone alcoves. The parchment long ago surrendered to time, but the impressions of symbols still remain delicate, oceanic patterns reminiscent of waves, rising toward a distant moon. Some scholars have attempted to interpret these ghost marks, suggesting they represent early theories of celestial cycles. But others feel they are more metaphor than measurement, the soft language of those who believed that knowledge flows more like water than stone. Perhaps the most striking feature lies in the very center of the chamber, a singular carved line etched deeply into the floor. It points not outward toward the dome, nor upward toward the heavens, but inward toward the space where a person might stand and breathe. Scholars have offered many interpretations. Some believe it marks the site where the high astronomer once stood to commune with the silent sky. Others think it is a symbolic gesture, a reminder that truth is not found in distance, but in depth, the inner landscape of memory, intuition, and quiet understanding. Yet most who have descended into this vault leave with the same reflection. The whispering vault was never meant to guide its observers toward the outer cosmos. It was built to fold the universe back into the self, to teach the listener that every star, every lost constellation, every forgotten rhythm of the heavens exists also within the chambers of the human heart. And so the chapter ends not with revelation, but with a soft, lingering uncertainty, a sacred pause. Perhaps the astronomer priests discovered something in the silence that could not be written down. Perhaps the constellations on the door represent maps, not of distant galaxies, but of inner landscapes long lost to the noise of the waking world. Or perhaps the vault still whispers beneath the kingdom, waiting for someone who can hear its quiet invitation to breathe, to listen, to remember the stars carried within. Where memory fades, their echoes remain. The gate of moonlit inscriptions, it is said, that at the far edge of a forgotten desert, a place where the wind speaks in long, unbroken breaths, there stands a solitary stone gate, half buried in drifting sand. No walls surround it, no path leads to it, and no settlement lies near enough to claim it. It simply rises from the earth like a memory the world could not completely erase. On moonlit nights, those who wander close swear they see symbols on its surface glow softly, as though answering an ancient call. Beneath the silence of the desert sky, this gate appears more alive than stone should ever be. Its pillars lean gently inward, forming an arch that frames nothing but the shifting horizon beyond. Yet it feels like an entrance not to a place, but to a moment, a threshold of breath carved out of the dust of lost ages. Whispers tell us the gate belonged to a people who believed the moon was the keeper of all memory, not the mind, not the written word, but the moon itself, watching, breathing, recording the quiet traces of human life. They said the moon stored every emotion that ever stirred within a heart, every hope breathed into dawn, every grief whispered into folds of night. And when the world forgot, the moon remembered, holding those fragments of humanity in its pale, watchful glow. The inscriptions that cover the gate reflect this belief. Soft spirals, drifting lines, symbols shaped like falling stars, rivers bending upward, and circles broken gently at their edges. They do not speak plainly. They do not instruct. They drift like thought, like breath. And tonight, as we stand before the gate under a moon marked by time, the air feels heavy with secrecy. The chapter opens with a slow, quiet image, moonlight settling across the surface of the stone, tracing the ancient symbols with faint silver. Each line brightens just enough to be sensed, not seen outright, as though the stone is speaking in a language meant not for the eyes, but for the inner ear, the part of us that listens with memory rather than sound. Some symbols curl inward, spiraling toward a single point, suggesting emotions returning home. Others stretch upward, elongated like rivers reaching toward the sky. These contradictions were not mistakes. They were deliberate. For the ancient desert people believed that truth was never one direction. It was always two, outward and inward, rising and descending, remembering and forgetting. We drift closer. Where memory fades, the stone holds its breath. The air around the gate feels still, as if the desert itself pauses in reverence. Sand gathers in the shallow grooves of the symbols, creating soft shadows that pulse gently with reflected moonlight. The surface seems to shift slightly when observed from the corner of the eye, but never when stared at directly. Many travelers have spoken of this illusion, the gate appearing to breathe. Perhaps it does, for among the many carvings lies one central motif, a long, curved line resembling the arc of the moon's journey across the sky, ending in a shape that looks almost like an ear. Scholars hesitate to interpret this symbol, yet old traditions are clear. This was not a gate built to be opened. It was a gate built to listen. The people who carved it believed that silence was a sacred art. And this stone, standing alone in a vast sea of dust, served as their sanctuary, not a place to enter, but a place to approach with humility. Here, they trained themselves to hear the smallest echoes within their own hearts, to listen to unspoken memories, to witness feelings that had been buried, not erased. It is said they gathered on nights when the moon was full, standing in quiet circles around the gate. They would place their hands on the cool stone surface and wait not for answers, but for awareness. In this ritual, speech was forbidden. Breath became their prayer. The inscriptions shimmered faintly when touched, as if awakened by their presence. Tonight, beneath the desert moon, we imagine those ancient figures swaying in hidden rhythms with the night wind, the symbols glowing like starlight caught in stone. A quiet devotion echoing across generations. As we wander deeper into the mystery, our fingers trace lines that feel impossibly smooth. stone is weathered yet intact, eroded yet still whispering its secrets. Each symbol carries a subtle emotion, a sigh, a longing, a moment preserved in dust. Rivers flowing toward the sky, stars falling inward, moons drawn as broken spirals. What do they mean? Some scholars believe the inscriptions formed a meditation map, a guide to internal reflection, teaching the practitioner to follow emotion back to its root. Others claim the images portray celestial events lost to time, starfalls that never reached the earth, eclipses unseen by modern eyes, tides that rose not in the seas, but in the spirit. But the desert elders held another belief, spoken only in their final generations. The gate was the moon's journal. Every symbol, every curve, every spiraled mark represented a memory the moon had chosen to record. The stone served as a page carved from the earth itself, a page that glowed only when the moon wished to reveal what it held. This explains why the gate changes subtly with each passing century, why some symbols fade while new ones appear, faint and unformed, why the surface feels warm on certain nights and cold on others, not because the stone changes, but because memory does. And the moon, like all witnesses of time, chooses what to keep and what to release. The deeper we wander around the gate, the more the desert falls away. The surrounding dunes fade into indistinct shapes, softened under the pale light. The silence becomes a presence, thick, luminous, aware. A soft pressure gathers behind the listener's chest, as though something long forgotten stirs in response to the inscriptions. One carving in particular draws the mind inward, a spiral beginning wide and open, then tightening toward a central point so small it becomes nearly invisible. This symbol recurs across the gate, sometimes large enough to fill a palm, sometimes etched so small it hides beneath the sand. Ancient texts speak of this spiral as the return, the pathway by which all things, memories, emotions, lost stories fold back into the self. To touch the spiral was to acknowledge the hidden script each soul carries, written not in ink or stone, but in the silent language of experience. Some say that if a person stood before the gate long enough, the inscriptions would begin to reflect their own inner world. The symbols that glowed brightest would correspond to memories long buried. The ones that remained dark were memories not yet ready to rise. No proof was ever found, yet the belief remains, carried quietly through the centuries. And perhaps belief is its own kind of truth. As the night deepens, the gate becomes more than stone. It becomes a presence calm, patient, cradling the quiet ache of time. The inscriptions shimmer with the gentlest pulse, like the heartbeat of something ancient but still alive. In this silence, a thought emerges softly. Perhaps the sanctuary once held beyond this gate was never a physical place at all. Perhaps the sanctuary was the act of standing here, of listening, of being remembered by the moon. the ancient people did not build temples for the gods. They built gateways for the self. And this one, half lost to the desert, remains the last sentinel of their beliefs. It is said that the final inscription, hidden near the base of the gate, was carved not for the moon, but for the generations to come. A single line drawn with trembling precision. All light returns to its source. The words are not written, but implied in the shape of the line, a long curve that bends gently back toward itself. Standing here, beneath the watchful moon, one feels the truth in it, that memories do not disappear. They simply drift into quieter places, waiting for moonlight to lift their edges once again. And so this chapter closes with a soft breath, a gentle fade into stillness. Perhaps the gate was never meant to be passed through. Perhaps it was meant only to be witnessed. A reminder that beneath the silence, memory glows, and that every soul carries a hidden script, marked by the moon, waiting to be felt in the soft hours of night. The river that remembered shadows it is said that in a valley where the winds seldom speak, there lies a river that moves with the soft patience of an old storyteller. Its surface glimmers beneath the moon as though it carries not water, but memory thin, shimmering, weightless. Those who wander near its banks often claim that the air feels slightly thicker, as if touched by echoes older than any living voice. And if one listens long enough, beyond the hush of reeds and the gentle curl of water against stone, something else can be felt, a presence that drifts like a forgotten breath. The chapter begins beneath a veil of twilight, where the valley stretches before us in muted tones of sand, moss, and fading sky. The river flows with a steady rhythm, not hurried, not idle, but with the familiarity of a path it has walked 1,000 times before. Some believe that rivers forget as they move, that their currents cleanse the weight of history. But whispers tell us that this river remembers. Beneath the silence, beneath the shimmer of moonlight, it holds the silhouettes of ages long vanished. Shadows that once belonged to temples, bridges, walking figures, all carried gently along as though preserved in liquid starlight. Where memory fades for the world above, the river keeps on recalling. It was once home to a civilization whose name has dissolved into dust. Their stories lie not in parchment or carving, but in the way stones rest near the shore, stacked in deliberate spirals, crescents, winding lines that mimic the river's own path. Some say these people believed that words were too fragile to guard the truth of their lives. Ink could fade, parchment could be lost, symbols could be broken. But water endured. It moved endlessly, never still, yet never forgetting the shape of what it carried. They trusted water more than they trusted themselves. As the moon rises, silvering the surface, the river's reflections deepen. Beneath the soft ripples, faint outlines begin to appear, as though stirred by ancient recollection. We see a suggestion of pillars, their tops long gone, sinking into the shimmering depths. Then, the curve of an archway, trembling like a mirage. Some see footsteps trailing along the water's edge, shadows of those who once walked there, preserved not by intention, but by tenderness. Perhaps the river remembers the weight of their footsteps, the way the earth remembers a seed. Whispers tell us the vanished civilization believed that shadows were the truest form of memory. Not the body, not the face, not the sound of one's voice, but the silhouette left behind when light touched a life. A shadow, they said, could not lie. It simply existed, shaped by the truth of the one who cast it. So when they built their temples, they looked not upward, but downward, into the reflection the river offered. They carved terraces that aligned not with the sun, but with the moon's drifting glow, so that their shadows would spill into the water at precise moments recorded not in stone, but in reflection. In this way, the river became their archive, a shifting library of silhouettes. Where memory fades, the river remembers. Tonight, the valley feels especially quiet, as though the winds themselves have paused to listen. We wander along the bank, the sand cool beneath our steps. The river drifts by, slow and deliberate, like someone turning the pages of an old book. Every ripple feels like a whisper of a forgotten chapter. It is said that this civilization left no written record because they believed that permanence was an illusion. What we carve may crumble. What we write may be erased. What we build may be swallowed by time. But water holds memory differently. It does not preserve shape, it preserves essence. It reflects the rise and fall of those who pass near it, carrying a softened imprint of their presence long after the world above has forgotten their names. Some claim the shadows in the river appear only under the moon, when light becomes gentler and less demanding. Under the sun, truth is too sharp. Under the moon, it becomes willing to be seen. As we follow the river's curve deeper into the valley, we pass by more of the stones left behind by the vanished people. Spirals etched into the earth with careful hands, circles within circles, recalling the flow of water and the cyclical nature of memory. Some stones mark places where the river once touched, others indicate where it receded. All tell the same silent story of a people who placed their faith in the quiet persistence of currents. They believed that to be forgotten was not a tragedy. To be unfelt was. And so they wove their lives into the river, trusting that even when their bodies had gone to dust, the water would remember the warmth of their fires, the echo of their songs, the soft weight of their grief. It is said that on certain nights, if the valley is still enough, the shadows in the river become clearer. Some have reported seeing entire scenes reflected in the water, a market lit by clay lanterns, a bridge of woven reeds bending under the feet of travelers, a procession of figures holding bowls of glowing sand. none of these structures remain on land. They exist only in water memory. Perhaps they never existed at all except here, in the river's recollection. We pause near a bend where the current slows, deepening into a pool that mirrors the sky. The moon hovers directly above it, and its light creates a soft bridge between heaven and water. For a moment, we sense the presence of those who once lived here, not as ghosts, not as mournful echoes, but as gentle silhouettes, imprints of life, preserved in the way the water curves around the stones. The valley around us feels suspended in time, as though waiting for something unnamed. Some believe that this river holds not only memories of a lost civilization, but memories of the earth itself, that it remembers the mountains before they stood tall, the forests before they fell to time, the footsteps of animals whose bones have long turned to dust. Beneath the silence, the river becomes a keeper of all things touched by light. As we continue to walk beside it, a question rises, soft and unhurried. Can a place remember us even when we no longer remember ourselves? Perhaps this is what the vanished people hoped, that by entrusting their stories to the river, they would never truly fade. That somewhere in the gentle curl of water, the shadow of their existence would continue to drift, day after day, night after night. Where memory fades, the river remembers. At last, we reach the quiet shore near the valley's end. The river narrows, then disappears into a curtain of reeds that sway like ancient listeners. The moon rests upon the horizon, dimming slowly as though preparing to leave. We stand in the hush of this final place, watching as the reflections blur into soft abstraction. The shadows fade, then return, then fade again like the last breaths of a dream before waking. The river offers no answers, only the suggestion that memory is not something held, but something felt, that the world keeps traces of all we are, even if only as the faintest silhouettes drifting beneath the surface of time. Perhaps the river still carries the shadows of the vanished people, not as ghosts, not as records, but as tender impressions, soft reflections waiting patiently to be quietly noticed. And as the night folds itself around the valley, we realize that the river does not remember with clarity or precision. It remembers with love. The chamber of echoing stars, it is said that deep beneath the crumbled bones of a forgotten mountain sanctuary, past corridors worn thin by centuries of dust and drifting prayer, there lies a chamber so quiet that even silence seems to hold its breath. Those who wander near speak of a single stone door carved with a pattern that resembles the sky, spirals of ancient constellations, lines that flow like the movement of tides, and faint star marks that glow only when the moon stands at its thinnest. Beneath the silence, this door waits like a guardian of something sacred, something long removed from the world of noise. Some believe the chamber beyond was crafted by a people who listened more than they spoke, a people who understood that the universe whispers its secrets softly, not in thunderous revelation, but in murmurs woven through the night. And so, on this quiet descent, we step where they once stepped, feet brushing against soft drifts of powdered stone, breath forming delicate clouds in the cool air. The mountain seems to inhale around us, as though acknowledging our arrival. When the stone door finally parts, it does so without a sound. No grinding, no echoing scrape, only a gentle shift, like fabric drawn aside. And the darkness inside does not feel empty. It feels expectant. We enter with a soft breath, and the chamber awakens. The echoes begin immediately, though nothing has been spoken. A shimmer of sound, faint as the trail of dust falling through moonlight, ripples through the air. It is not music. It is not a voice. It is something in between an impression of sound, the memory of a whisper before the whisper even exists. The ancients, it is said, built this chamber to mirror the night sky, believing that stars possess voices too delicate for open air. Here, beneath the mountain's weight, they crafted a sanctuary where celestial murmurs could gather and be heard. The walls curve gently inward, forming a vast dome that glitters with thousands of embedded crystals. Yet these crystals do not shine on their own. They shimmer only when sound touches them, lighting up in scattered constellations that shift with each exhale we release. Where memory fades in the outside world, here it returns as subtle radiance. Every breath a brief constellation, every movement a soft rearrangement of stars. The watchers who once tended this place knew its language intimately. They were not priests, though some have called them that. They were not astronomers, though they understood the sky. They were quiet keepers, chosen for their patience, their gentleness, and their belief that truth often reveals itself in fragments. They slept above the chamber, in narrow rooms carved into cliffside stone, and they lived by a singular creed: listen longer than you think necessary. Scrolls found near the sanctuary's entrance reveal fragments of their teachings. Torn by time, marked by dust, the words remain delicate as breath. Stars speak in echoes. We answer in silence. It is whispered that apprentices spent years learning to translate the chamber's murmured patterns. They sat in circles upon the smooth floor, eyes lowered, palms open, allowing the echoes to drift between their fingers like invisible threads. They believed that the sky above conveyed its lessons here, beneath the earth, where distractions of daylight and human urgency could not distort them. Some claimed that the echoes formed shapes not within the chamber, but within the listener's inner world. A spiral of thought, a flicker of memory, a sudden understanding rising like dawn behind closed eyes. But all descriptions were subtle, almost hesitant, as if the watchers knew that words weakened what was meant to be felt. Whispers tell us that the chamber was not always gentle. There were nights, rare and unrecorded except in the vaguest notes, when the echoes grew strong enough to vibrate the very stones. apprentices described a sensation like standing beneath a sky filled with falling stars, the weight of celestial messages descending all at once. Yet even then, the chamber did not roar. Its intensity remained soft, like a heartbeat echoing through layers of time. We drift deeper now, toward the center of the room, where a single pedestal rises from the floor. Carved with spirals and dust-soft grooves, it might once have held a vessel, a scroll, or a small star-shaped stone. Though empty now, its presence still feels purposeful. Some say it was used to amplify the quietest whispers, allowing even the faint breath of a distant star to form patterns upon the chamber walls. Others believe it was the place where apprentices first learned that not all knowledge seeks to be spoken aloud. It is here, in this soft center, that the chamber reveals its gentle contradiction. For as the echoes move through the room, shimmering against the star-marked dome, a pattern begins to repeat, faint but unmistakable. A phrase forms, though none has spoken. A ripple of sound that seems to carry intention. The ancients wrote of this phenomenon with tender caution. Sometimes the chamber returns what was never said. The watchers called these memoriechos, and they believed them to be remnants of voices long since dissolved into dust. Perhaps the thoughts of the chamber's earliest visitors, preserved in subtle vibrations. Perhaps fragments of dreams carried by the mountain's slow breathing. Or perhaps, as the most hopeful apprentices believed these echoes were messages from the sky itself, drifting across unimaginable distances, seeking a quiet place to land. We stand in the stillness as one such echo unfurls. It is soft, hesitant, like a message unsure of its audience. The crystals above shimmer in a slow spiral, casting dim reflections across the floor. The sound is impossible to describe, too gentle for language, too shaped for randomness. It resembles a sigh, a memory of a voice, a thread of meaning woven from silence itself. The ancients, it is said, listened for decades before they understood even a single echo. And even then, understanding was never complete. Knowledge here was a river of half-known truths, always shifting, always dissolving just enough to remain mysterious. The watchers believed this incompleteness was sacred. They taught that clarity comes not from grasping, but from resting one's thoughts lightly in the presence of something vast. We linger with this idea as the echo fades, leaving the chamber dim once more. Above us, the embedded crystals dim, returning to their natural stonery. Only the faintest remnants of light remain, like dust caught in a memory. The chamber returns to quiet, but not to emptiness. There is a presence here, though whether it belongs to the mountain, the stars, or the centuries of listeners who came before, no one can say. Some ancient texts suggest that the chamber was originally built around a natural resonance, a hum that rose from deep within the mountain itself. The builders shaped the dome carefully to amplify this hum, until it resembled something celestial, something that mirrored the starlit sky, not with sight, but with sound. Others believe the room was crafted in imitation of a night sky ceremony performed by the founders of the sanctuary, who traced constellations with their voices in the dark. Yet no record explains the chamber fully. It remains partly a mystery, partly a memory, partly a dream of sound and silence mingled together. As we prepare to leave, the chamber offers one last echo. Barely more than a breath, it rises behind us like a soft farewell. Perhaps it is only the sound of our own footsteps dissolving into stillness. Perhaps it is the mountain exhaling. Or perhaps, as the old watchers so gently believed the stars themselves lean closer when someone listens with a quiet heart. The stone door opens again without a sound. Cool air from the corridors beyond drifts inward, stirring the faintest shimmer from the crystals overhead. We step out, carrying the quiet with us, feeling the weight of the mountain shift back into place. Some voices only echo when we are ready to hear them. And some chambers, like this one, continue whispering long after the world above has forgotten their name. Perhaps it was never meant to be fully understood. Perhaps its purpose was simply to remind us that beneath the silence, in places where memory fades, there are truths so soft they can only be heard in dreams. The map drawn in falling ash, it is said that at the quiet heart of a burnt city one swallowed long ago by flame, smoke, and the soft erasure of time, there lies a map that refuses to disappear. Not carved in stone, nor painted on parchment, but traced in falling ash across the scarred expanse of the city's surviving plaza. Each evening, when the wind softens and the sky dims to the pale blue of a fading memory, the ash settles and shapes itself into lines too deliberate to be chance. Some call it a remnant of the city's last breath. Others believe it is the work of unseen keepers who still tend to the ruins in silence. But beneath the silence, if one kneels close and watches with patient eyes, the ash map moves not dramatically, but with a subtle shifting, like the murmur of a dream adjusting itself. It begins with a single stroke of gray dust sweeping across cracked stone. Then another, and another. Slowly, a pattern emerges, sweeping arcs like the ribs of an ancient shell, broken circles resembling forgotten gates, symbols half-formed as though remembering themselves from a different age. Wanderers claim that the map never looks the same twice. At dusk, it draws one city. By dawn, it sketches another. The chapter opens with this fragile drawing, stirred by each passing breeze, yet somehow never erased. The plaza carries the scent of old smoke, but it is gentle now, softened by centuries of drifting seasons. The stones beneath the ash are warm from sunlight, though the city itself remains cold. buildings, once proud and tall, stand as hollow silhouettes against a sky tinged with the faint color of dying embers. Vines cling to their sides like memories reluctant to let go. Whispers tell us that this was once a place of luminous scholars, men and women who believed destruction was merely another form of transformation. They studied flame not as an ending, but as a teacher. They built temples and archives from materials meant to decay, trusting that impermanence carried truths that permanence concealed. Some say their greatest works were never meant to last, for what is eternal can never learn to change. Their maps, especially, were made of delicate things: smoke trails, sand lines, drifting pigments, and ash, always ash. They believed that ash remembered the shape of what had burned, that it carried a soft echo of the structures, the thoughts, the dreams that fire once consumed. To draw with ash was to translate memory into form. And so, perhaps, this plaza map is not a monument to ruin, but a continuation of an ancient philosophy, a map that redraws itself each night, because memory itself is always shifting. We follow the ash lines gently, moving as though walking through a ritual. The city around us is quiet, but not empty of presence. Every broken beam, every crumbled stairway, every half-fallen arch seems to hum with the faint residue of stories. The sunlight fades now, sliding behind the blackened ruins, casting long shadows that stretch across the plaza like dark rivers. At the center of the ash map, faint symbols appear: half-formed suns, broken circles, spirals reminiscent of stars collapsing into themselves. Some resemble gates drawn in trembling strokes, as though the one who shaped them hesitated before committing to the lines. One symbol, repeated often, but never fully the same, looks like an open eye drifting into sleep. The wanderers who visit this place often speak quietly, as though afraid to disturb the ash. They say the map shifts subtly at night, not enough for the eye to catch in motion, but enough that a careful observer will sense the difference by morning. One traveler claimed to have camped beside it for 7 nights, watching the lines rearrange into paths to places no longer present, into cities erased by time, into ideas rather than destinations. As the dusk deepens, the ash glows faintly in the last of the day's light. A soft breeze passes, but the lines hold. They move only with intention, never with chaos. It is believed by some that the map responds to the quietest thoughts, that the ash listens, and in listening, reflects something back. Ancient records scorched, fragmented, tell us that the scholars of this city once used maps not to find locations, but to find understandings. They taught that geography was woven not only across land, but across the inner terrains of memory, emotion, and dream. A path might lead to a river in one map, and to a revelation in another. The wanderers who still follow this ash map do so not because it leads anywhere, but because it invites reflection. Its fragile nature reminds them that meaning often settles softly and must be handled with care. The deeper we drift into this story, the more the plaza feels like a quiet breath held between worlds, between what was and what remains. The ash swirls faintly along the edges of the map, forming new ridges and veiled valleys. In some moments, the pattern resembles the city as it once stood. Broad avenues, circular squares, waterways lined with temples. In other moments, it resembles something more abstract, lines like constellations of thought, connecting ideas instead of streets. Where memory fades, the ash seems to fill the gaps. Near the edge of the plaza, half buried beneath stone and time, lies a small metallic fragment. Bronze, oddly unburnt. Upon it are etched words worn thin. Maps are the breath of forgetting. Another shard reads, "Truth lives in what cannot be held." These fragments echo the philosophy that shaped this place, that the most profound truths are not fixed, but ever drifting, not engraved, but gently remembered. Night arrives slowly, as though reluctant to disturb the map. The first star appears overhead, pale, trembling, and as if in response, the ash shifts. Only a little, just enough to create a new curve, a new pathway, a new suggestion. Perhaps the map is following the stars. Perhaps it is following us. Perhaps it is following something that neither sky nor wanderer can fully name. Some say the city still dreams, that its last inhabitants, those scholars of impermanence, left their final lesson in this plaza, a reminder that knowledge and loss are sisters, and that both shape the paths we walk. We sit at the plaza's edge for a moment, letting the dusk settle into our bones. The ash map lies quiet now, its nighttime transformation subtle, almost reverent. Beneath the silence, we can sense the faint hum of something continuing, something not yet finished, with its gentle reformation. Perhaps the map is not meant to guide us anywhere at all. Perhaps it is simply an invitation to listen softly to the shifting truths that rise when the world grows quiet. Some maps lead to places, others lead to understandings, and some, like this one, offer nothing but the delicate space where meaning almost forms, but never fully arrives. In this soft uncertainty, the chapter closes, leaving us suspended between embers and memory, wondering whether the ash will draw a different truth tomorrow. The glass orchard beneath the moon night returned like a whispered confession. The desert wind had cooled, brushing the dunes with a sigh so ancient it felt like it had been waiting centuries for anyone, to hear it again. You walked at the heart of that silence, lantern dimmed to a soft ember. The sky above you bruised in midnight blue, while the first stars trembled like shy witnesses. The map of falling ash from the night before had led you here to a valley carved into the earth like a wound that refused to close. At first, you thought the shimmer rising from below was heat, but Heat does not glow. Heat does not pulse. Heat does not breathe. This place did. You descended the stone path, carved in the shape of a broken spiral, until the world opened a little wider and the truth revealed itself. An orchard, but not of trees. They stood like frozen lightning crystalline trunks twisting upward, branches arcing in delicate fractals, leaves shimmer thin and translucent like the wings of insects made from moonlight. Each tree held fruit the size of your palm, smooth spheres of moving glass, swirling with colors that shifted each time you blinked. A glass orchard, asleep beneath the moon. You stepped closer, and the world shifted. The fruit hummed, not loudly, just enough to brush the edges of your hearing. The hum layered upon itself, rising and folding like a buried chorus. And though it was not language, you understood. The fruit remembered things, not visions, not stories, lives, moments so old the air around them felt heavier. You reached for one. It warmed beneath your touch, as if relieved that someone had finally dared to hold it again. A pulse rippled through the orchard, leaves trembling, branches shaking off invisible dust, the hum intensifying into a slow, aching melody. The fruit cracked, not shattered, opened, like an eye that had been waiting to see you. Light spilled out, gentle and liquid, swirling around your hand and climbing up your arm until the world dissolved, and you stood somewhere else entirely, beneath a sky of twin suns. On soil the color of crushed lavender. In a hall of pillars carved from something that looked like bone polished into marble. A memory not yours. A woman stood at the far end, robes embroidered with constellations that no longer existed, hair braided in silver cords. Her eyes glowed like molten copper. She was speaking, not to you, to the one who held the fruit long before. And yet her words pierced you. It will fall, she said. The kingdom, the sky, the name of our people. Hide the seeds. Let them sleep in glass. So that one day, when the world is quiet again, someone will follow the ash and find us. The vision collapsed. You fell to your knees in the orchard, heart pounding. The fruit now hollow in your hand, empty, but no longer humming. The branches around you stilled, settling into a silence so deep it felt reverent. You understood now. The orchard was not a monument. It was an archive. Each fruit a memory, each tree a lineage, each leaf a sliver of a vanished civilization's breath. You walked deeper. Crystals crunched softly beneath your boots. The moonlight refracted in spirals, scattering thin ribbons of white across the ground. The orchard felt endless, a labyrinth made of frozen moments. But something had changed. The trees began to tilt toward you ever so slightly, as if turning their faces to acknowledge your presence. Leaves rustled in patterns that felt like they were trying to speak. And then you saw it. A single path opening where moments before there had been none. The trees bowed away, forming a corridor of crystal branches leading toward a clearing bathed in a softer, bluer light. You followed. At the center stood a structure that resembled both a shrine and a seed pod, an oval of layered glass petals, shimmering with trapped starlight. But what drew you near was the object resting inside, a fruit larger than all the rest, not humming, singing, a low, haunting melody, rising and falling like the tide of a forgotten ocean. You approached with reverence. The moment your fingers brushed its surface, the entire orchard awakened. Branches glowed, leaves rang like tiny bells. Every fruit pulsed, stars above flared brighter. And then the great fruit opened. A beam of soft blue light spilled upward like mist rising underwater, swirling into shapes, untangling themselves into something that felt like speech. A voice emerged, a voice woven from memories, from the breath of an empire turned to dust. You have come far, wanderer. Your breath stalled. Do not fear. What you hold is not burden, but bridge. Our echoes chose you. Our stories waited for the sound of your footsteps. The light circled you, gentle and knowing. You will carry us into the next horizon, and we will guide you through the doors that remain. The orchard dimmed again. The glow folded quietly back into the trees. The voice faded with a sigh of eternal sleep. You stood alone, cradling a fruit that was no longer fruit, but a sphere of soft radiance resting in your hand like a captured moon. Your lantern flickered, and the breeze stirred. Beyond the orchard, the world waited. You tightened your grip around the glowing sphere, feeling its heartbeat synchronize with yours. The desert night stretched before you like an unrolled scroll, and you walked on, with the memory of a lost civilization lighting your path. The monastery of the Silent Bell, it is said that on certain nights, when the moon drifts low enough to graze the cliffside, a sound rises from the old monastery high above the valley. A soft chime, a note too delicate to belong to any metal that has ever echoed in daylight. And yet, the bell at the monastery has not rung for 1,000 years. Some believe the chime is only the wind brushing the abandoned terraces. Others claim it is memory itself, a lingering resonance of a time when monks shaped silence as though it were clay, crafting a different kind of devotion. Tonight, we approach the cliff in a calm hush as twilight deepens into a shade of silver blue. The path is narrow, carved by footsteps that faded long before the kingdom fell. Mist clings to the stones like breath that has forgotten its speaker. Above us, the silhouette of the monastery rises dark, weather-worn, patient. Beneath the silence, the faintest glimmer of moonlight touches the bronze curve of the ancient bell, suspended beneath an archway of crumbling pillars. And for a moment, the world seems to listen. The invitation somewhere beyond the gate. A quiet hum drifts through the empty corridors, not quite a sound, not quite an absence. It is the feeling of a held breath, a question waiting to be asked. We cross the threshold into the monastery, and the air shifts, heavy yet gentle, like walking into a memory that has spent centuries in meditation. The terraces stretch out before us, each stone smoothed by the passing touch of monks who once walked in slow circles, fingers tracing ancient grooves carved with symbols of moons, spirals, and dust. Whispers tell us that these monks believed silence was not the absence of sound, but a living element of force that shaped the mind the way rivers shape stone. Their robes, long vanished, once brushed softly against the floor, and the hallways carried nothing but the faint rhythm of breathing in unison. Where memory fades, we begin to sense their presence still. The quiet here is not empty. It is full like the deep interior of a seed waiting to bloom. The deepening mystery at the center of the monastery stands the great bronze bell, tall as a man, cold as the sea before dawn. Its surface is etched with star-marked symbols, constellations spiraling inwards like a celestial map, no longer understood. It is said the bell was crafted not to ring, but to hold silence within its metal shell. An unusual purpose, an impossible one, some would say. But the monks who forged it were seekers of subtler truths. To them, silence was a vessel, a container for thought, for revelation, for the unspoken teachings that lived between breaths. The bell, they believed, captured silence the way a cup captures water. One could meditate before it and drink from the quiet it held. If one listened long enough, the silence inside the bell began to hum. Not like a tone, but like a presence, a soft pulse in the air, faint as starlight on winter stone. Tonight, standing beneath the bell, we feel that pulse still. Somewhere deep within the bronze, something stirs. A vibration so delicate, we almost mistake it for the trembling of our own heartbeat. Marked by the moon, the bell seems to glow faintly, as though touched by memory. The monks who vanished whispers tell us that the monks practiced a form of devotion unlike any other. They meditated on silence itself, listening not for heavenly trumpets or loud miracles, but for the quieter truths that slip unnoticed into the world. They believed the greatest revelations were whispered by the universe in tones so subtle that only the patient could hear. Their scrolls speak of the deep echo, a phenomenon said to arise only when silence becomes complete, a moment when the mind ceases its noise and the world reveals what lies beneath. Some scrolls say the monks once maintained a discipline of listening that could last days. Others describe a ritual where the entire monastery fell into a unified stillness, a silence so profound that even the flutter of a moth's wings would sound like thunder. Then, one night, the silence broke. What happened is written only in fragmented accounts, ink smudged, scrolls torn, memory unclear. But it is agreed that the monks disappeared soon after, leaving the monastery to the wind and the slow erosion of time. The silent bells only ring beneath the silence. There lingers an unsettling truth. The bell rang once, just once. No one recorded how. No one recorded why. And no one alive has heard it. But scribes who visited centuries later found a single line on a surviving scroll. The bell spoke only in silence, and its voice reshaped the kingdom. Some interpret this to mean the tone was never meant for ears of flesh, that the sound was an internal shift, a tremor within consciousness, not within air. Others believe the bell's ring was not a sound at all, but a moment of pure understanding, shared among all who listened. A revelation that could not be spoken afterward. Perhaps the monks were changed by it. Perhaps they dissolved into the silence they worshipped. Perhaps they walked out into the night and never returned. Where memory fades, imagination takes its place. Walking the empty halls, we move deeper into the monastery, through corridors draped in moonshadow. The air is cool, still, yet alive with something unseen. Stone alcoves hold relics of the vanished monks, a cracked vessel, a wooden prayer wheel, a half-faded tapestry depicting a moon over a spiraling stair. In the dormitory hall, dust lies thick, untouched for centuries. The bed's simple stone platforms remain arranged in perfect rows, each one facing a narrow window carved into the cliffside. From here, the monks watched the stars, not for divination, but for reflection. They believed the night sky was a mirror held up to the soul. Somewhere between these rows, a faint hum rises again, subtle, like a sigh held too long. We pause, and the hum fades. Or perhaps it was never there. Whispers tell us that in the quietest of nights, the silence becomes shaped, taking on forms like water touched by moonlight. Some travelers have reported seeing ripples in the air, as though the silence moves with a slow, tidal rhythm. Tonight, we see no ripples, yet the air feels heavy with meaning. The echo of the unheard tone as we return to the great bell. The moon now hangs directly overhead, bathing the bronze in pale light. Its patterns shimmer faintly, like constellations breathing, and suddenly not a sound, but a sensation. A soft stirring in the heart, a gentle pressure behind the eyes, a pulse of something ancient and tender. Perhaps the bell is speaking, or perhaps we are simply quiet enough to hear what has always been there. It is said the bell's silent tone does not travel through air, but through intention. It rings only in those who listen without expectation. Standing here, we feel the weight of centuries settle around us. The monks who once stood in this very place, the wind that carried away their footsteps, the silence they shaped and left behind. The bell remains perfectly still, and yet something within us resonates. A soft echo, a question, a memory we cannot name. The fade into silence as we step back toward the gate. The monastery seems to exhale. The wind brushes the terraces. The moon drifts a little lower. Somewhere in the valley, an owl calls. And if one listens closely, if one is patient, the faintest chime floats once more across the night. Perhaps it is only the wind. Perhaps it is only imagination. Or perhaps the bell still holds its ancient silence and releases it in delicate whispers to those willing to wander these halls. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. And so, we leave the monastery with gentle uncertainty, carrying the soft hum of the silent bell deep within us, where it will ring or perhaps remain unspoken long after the moon has set. The garden that bloomed at dusk in a valley shrouded by silver fog, where the world seems to hold its breath between day and night. There lies a garden spoken of only in the gentlest of whispers. Some call it the twilight sanctuary, others the field of dreaming blossoms, but most simply say, with a hush softened by wonder, it wakes when the sun sleeps. It is said that no one has ever seen the garden in full daylight, not because it is hidden, but because it refuses the sun turning its face instead toward the first faint glimmer of the stars. Tonight, as the horizon dims and the last gold fades from the sky, we step into the valley, guided only by the mist curling through the air like slow-moving breath. The world is pale, hushed, expectant. The fog drifts in silver ribbons across the ground, brushing our ankles like something alive. And as the first star rises quiet, distant, pulsing softly, the garden wakes. The invitation at first, the awakening is almost imperceptible. A single bud trembles. A petal stirs as though remembering how to open. Then, slowly, in an unfolding older than memory, the plants around us begin to glow. Not brightly, just a faint luminescence, like moonlight reflected in dew. Pale blossoms unfurl beneath the dimming sky, stretching toward the cool evening air. They do not rush. They open with reverence, as though each petal is a prayer. Where memory fades, the garden breathes its oldest stories into the mist. Ancient caretakers once tended this place, believing the blossoms drank moonlight the way desert flowers drink rain. They taught that the moon carried whispers from travelers who walked the night, lost souls, wandering pilgrims, forgotten gods, and the flowers took these whispers into their soft petals, storing them like secrets waiting to be heard. Some caretakers claimed that, if one listened closely, the blossoms sometimes murmured in the language of dreams. Tonight, standing in their quiet glow, we begin to believe it. The deepening mystery, the garden stretches far beyond what the fog allows us to see. Everywhere, flowers bloom in shapes that feel both familiar and impossible. Petals folded like ancient scrolls, stems twisting in spirals reminiscent of old constellations, leaves patterned like broken tapestries from kingdoms that no longer exist. Each one seems to carry a fragment of a forgotten story. Whispers tell us that a long-lost people crafted this place not as a sanctuary for plants, but as a sanctuary for memory. To them, dusk was the most sacred hour, a threshold that blurred the boundaries between the seen and unseen, the spoken and unspoken, the remembered and the forgotten. They believed dusk softened the threads between worlds, allowing truths too fragile for daylight to drift gently into bloom. We wandered deeper into the glowing paths. The fog thickens around us in soft plumes, swirling whenever we exhale, as though responding to our presence. Somewhere in the distance, a cluster of tall flowers sways, though there is no wind. Their petals shimmer with a faint blue-green radiance, as if holding traces of an ocean long vanished. Others glow with a dusty rose hue, their delicate veins forming patterns like ancient maps. Perhaps the caretakers once read these patterns the way some read the stars. Perhaps the blossoms were their library, a living archive of myths whispered into the petals at night. The rituals of dusk, it is said that at the time of this garden's flourishing, the caretakers would gather at twilight in quiet ceremony. They carried no tools, wore no ornaments, spoke no words. Instead, they sat among the blossoms, hands resting gently on the earth, waiting for the light to dim. As the first star appeared, they would breathe deeply, offering their thoughts to the night air. The flowers, in turn, responded. Some straightened slightly, others opened more fully, their glow intensifying as though receiving what was offered. To the caretakers, this exchange was not symbolic. It was communion. They believed that memory itself wandered at dusk, that the world released its unspoken stories when the sun surrendered the sky. And the flowers caught those drifting stories like dew. Those who visited the garden under the caretaker's guidance claimed they sometimes felt the earth hum faintly beneath their fingertips, a soft vibration like the heartbeat of something ancient and alive. Tonight, kneeling among the glowing petals, we feel a similar tremor, delicate, rhythmic, fleeting. Perhaps it is only imagination. Perhaps not. The blossoms of forgotten tapestries further in, the garden grows stranger. Some blossoms resemble threads woven together, their petals stitching themselves into patterns that echo fabrics once worn by priestesses and kings. These tapestry flowers flutter when touched by the faintest breeze, their woven petals whispering against one another like pages turning in a book made of silk. Others produce a sound so soft it is felt more than heard, a quiet rustle, a gentle sigh. A few blooms resemble broken circles, their petals like fragments of lunar symbols found on the crumbled walls of ancient sanctuaries. One cluster grows near a pool of still water. Their petals hold a faint copper sheen, as though brushed by the dust of forgotten temples. We lean closer, and the petals seem to shift, revealing glimpses of shapes within the glow. A half-formed memory, a face without detail, a path that leads nowhere yet feels familiar. Perhaps the garden does not store stories exactly. Perhaps it stores the emotions behind them, the longing, the grief, the quiet hope. The flower that never opened at the farthest edge of the garden, where the fog rises thickest and the night feels heaviest, we find a solitary plant. It stands alone, its petals tightly closed, a soft aura of silver around its unopened form. Caretakers once spoke of such flowers' buds that refused to bloom not out of stubbornness, but out of protection. These blossoms, they said, held secrets too fragile for the world, truths that could only be revealed when the time was right and when the listener was ready. Tonight, we kneel before it. The air is still. The mist rests gently on the ground. The stars shine above us in pale, trembling patterns. We wait, hoping for the slightest movement, a flutter, a breath, a whisper. But the flower remains closed, quiet, guarded, enduring. Perhaps some mysteries are meant to sleep a little longer. Perhaps the petals will open for someone else, in another dusk, in another age. As we rise, the valley sighs with a soft breeze, the first since we arrived. It passes gently through the garden, rustling the glowing blossoms like a whisper moving through dreams. The solitary flower trembles once, just barely, then stills. The fade into silence, we walk back toward the heart of the garden, where the paths weave like threads in a forgotten story. The mist has grown thicker, softening every shape, erasing every edge. The blossoms continue to glow, their petals reflecting the sky's deepening blue. Somewhere behind us, a faint sound rises, a soft chiming, like glass touched by moonlight. Perhaps it is the flowers murmuring to one another. Perhaps it is the memory of the caretakers, still lingering like a gentle breath. Some voices only echo when night falls. As we leave the valley, the blossoms dim behind us, folding their petals slowly as though returning to sleep. And in the quiet, we carry the soft glow of the dusk-blooming garden inside us, a light too small to see, yet too ancient to forget. The sanctuary beneath the sleeping stone. They say the stone has been lying there since the first winds learned to wander. A colossal monolith, half buried in a windswept plain where grass shivers like a nervous thought. To those who pass by, it appears ancient, sacred, and impossibly veiled, as though the earth itself grew tired of holding its secrets and decided instead to bury them beneath weight and myth. It is said the stone is sleeping, not dead, not fallen, not forgotten, sleeping, for no living soul has ever managed to move it, not an inch, not a breath. And whispers tell us that beneath its immense, star-marked surface lies a sanctuary built by a civilization who believed that wisdom grew in darkness, that truth was shaped in silence, and that only those who understood the language of shadows could ever find the path inward. Tonight, with the moon washed pale behind drifting clouds, the plain feels like a place where the world exhales slowly. The wind moves with a hush more felt than heard, brushing around the monolith like reverence or warning. Beneath the silence, the ground seems to pulse with a memory older than seasons. The stone's surface is carved with faint spirals, so eroded they look like pieces of a dream the earth tried to forget. Some say these spirals mirror the movement of forgotten constellations. Others insist they map an ocean that never existed on land. Either way, the carvings feel oceanic, as if waves once broke against this giant in some mythic age. And then there, barely visible, a line of silver. A seam, thin as a hair, appears at the stone's base when the moon tilts at just the right angle. Marked by the moon, the seam seems to breathe open in a slow exhalation of cold air. No hinge, no mechanism, no sound. A passage revealed not by strength, but by timing, a doorway meant only for those who wait rather than force. We slip inside. The air instantly cools, tasting faintly of dust and minerals, of a world untouched by the sun's impatient hands. The descent begins with a narrow slope hewn carefully between ancient rock, so tight at first that even our footsteps feel too loud for the space. Where memory fades, the walls take on a strange sheen. They are not carved, they are polished. So polished they seem wet, reflecting pale glimmers of light that do not come from any torch or flame we have carried. These faint gleams shift as we move, as if acknowledging our presence or warning us to tread softly. The deeper we descend, the more we understand the people who built this place did not worship sound. They revered stillness. Each chamber, each corridor seems shaped to cradle silence, to magnify the softest breath into a revelation. Even the air holds itself respectfully, suspended like a held note. We reach the first chamber. Oval in shape, its ceiling curves like the inside of a closed eye. Carvings ripple along the walls, eyes everywhere, but every one of them shut. No gaze to follow us, no judgment, no fear. Just lids lowered in endless meditation, as if the stone itself remembers a time when sight was a burden and stillness was the truest form of seeing. A phrase, carved in fine, delicate strokes, circles the rim of the chamber. It is said the quiet carries more truth than the loudest wind. The words feel ancient, sacred, the kind spoken only after long contemplation. We continue. The next chamber opens into a long hall lined with relief carvings of hands cupped around invisible objects. Empty shapes, unheld offerings, or perhaps the people believed that what mattered most could never be held at all. Between the hands, more symbols appear, spirals, echoes, lines that bend and twist like drifting constellations. Here and there the walls shimmer faintly, not with reflected light, but with something deeper, older, something almost celestial. Whispers tell us the builders sought to map not the heavens above, but the heavens within. That they found constellations not by looking upward, but inward toward the quiet chambers of the mind, the hollow where breath fades, where thought dissolves into something more primordial. A faint vibration thrums through the floor. Not movement, not danger, just the pulse of a place remembering us. We reach a low archway that seems too small to pass through, Yet when we bow, the stone warms under our palms, and the arch expands just enough to let us slip by. Not magic, or perhaps a kind of magic the builders understood long before we did. That humility opens more doors than strength ever will. Beyond it lies the deepest chamber yet, circular, perfectly proportioned, a sanctuary within a sanctuary. Here, every wall curves inward, guiding sound into a single central point, and yet there is no sound, not even the soft rustle of our clothing, not even the whisper of breath. Silence reigns so completely that it feels alive, a being older than the stones, older than the people who carved this place. It wraps around us, not suffocating, but holding us gently, like the quiet that settles before a revelation. And then we see it. At the chamber's center lies a stone altar, low and unadorned except for one engraving. Another pair of closed eyes, serene, patient, eternal. Around them, faint star marks dot the surface, like a sky reduced to symbols, a cosmos compressed into a single sleeping thought. Another inscription spirals around the altar. Wisdom is the echo of a question asked in darkness. The phrase lingers in the air, curling around us like breath. We stand there for a long moment, minutes, hours. It's impossible to say, until the walls seem to shift almost imperceptibly, urging us upward gently, like a tide turning. The sanctuary does not push us out, nor does it beckon us deeper. It simply reminds us that all sanctuaries must be eventually left behind. As we retrace our steps, the chambers feel subtly changed, though it may be us who have changed. The closed eyes seem softer. The cupped hands seem fuller. The silence seems warmer, as though we have carried a fragment of it within us, marking us in some way we will only understand later. The seam of moonlight widens as we approach. The stone breathes its cold breath once more. We slip out into the night, the wind-swept plain stretching around us like a great sigh. Above, the moon hangs motionless, pale and distant, as though watching over both stone and sanctuary alike. We look back at the colossal monolith, still, immense, unmoved. It lies there, a giant buried, a sentinel veiled in age and dust, its surface gathering the soft glow of the stars. One might almost think it truly is sleeping, dreaming beneath the night sky, dreaming of the silent chambers below, dreaming of a wisdom we touched but barely grazed. And as the wind carries the faintest echo across the plain, we wonder a final lingering question. Does the stone guard the sanctuary, or does the sanctuary guard the stone? Or more mysterious, still, does the stone dream the sanctuary? And are we but wanderers in its ancient, star-marked sleep? The night offers no answer. Only silence, only wonder, only the whisper that some truths grow only in darkness. The astronomer's lantern of forgotten dawn. It is said that in a kingdom long returned to dust, there lies a lantern whose glow was never born of flame. Instead, it carries within its fragile walls the memory of dawns long faded, captured like breath against cold glass. Some call it an artifact of devotion, others a vessel of history. But whispers tell us that it was once the beating heart of a celestial sanctuary, tended by astronomers who believed that the first light of every morning held scriptures written not in ink, but in color. The story begins in a corridor carved from pale stone, its walls stained by centuries of drifting sand. Here, beneath an abandoned observatory dome cracked by the weight of forgotten seasons, the lantern rests half buried, half awake. When touched, very gently, its glow awakens like a memory stirred from deep sleep, soft, warm, hesitant. It illuminates nothing sharply. Instead, it washes every surface in a quiet blush, like dawn rising behind distant mountains. Beneath the silence of this ruined kingdom, the lantern is said to have once guided generations of astronomer scribes, those who read the sky the way others read scrolls. They believed that each morning offered a unique message. Some mornings spoke of change, some whispered of patience. Others carried the faint promise of rain or hope or endings too gentle to fear. The astronomers traced these meanings with reverence, their fingers hovering above charts etched in star-marked stone, their eyes reflecting the lantern's tender glow. As we wander deeper into these corridors, where memory fades, we see their world breathe around us. Scattered tools, dust-drowned manuscripts, celestial wheels carved with spirals and crescents. Though the people are long gone, their presence lingers like the last glimmer of twilight on a distant shore. The lantern's radiance guides us onward. Its light never burns, it murmurs. A soft, amber shimmer clings to the air like an echo held too close to the heart. Some say the lantern was crafted from the glass of a falling star, cooled in oceanic winds before it touched the earth. Others believe it was shaped by hands who understood the boundary between darkness and light the way poets understand silence. No one knows for certain, but all agree that the dawns it held were real, or at least real enough to guide those who needed them. Whispers tell us that the astronomers would gather before sunrise, standing beneath the great dome of their observatory, the lantern hanging at its center. When darkness grew thick, its glow would swell, blooming into hues that mirrored the sky's first breath: pale rose, dust gold, muted lavender, the trembling blue that heralds the world's awakening. In those subtle shades, they found meaning. In those gentle shifts of color, they traced destinies. It was never worship. It was listening. It was the simple belief that the universe spoke most clearly in the softness before day fully begins. Yet the story deepens, as all ancient stories do, slowly, quietly, like a spiral traced in drifting sand. Over time, the lantern began to change. Some mornings, its glow would fade, as though dawn itself had forgotten to rise within it. On days when the sky outside remained overcast, when storms swept the horizon or heavy clouds sealed the world from the sun, the lantern dimmed even further, its once vivid hues dissolving into a faint, aching gray. The astronomers took this as a sign. Not a warning, omens were too sharp a word for such gentle things, but a sorrow, perhaps, a mourning, as though the lantern felt what the sky felt, as though its light was bound not to flame, but to hope repeated each morning. There is an account carved into a stone panel still clinging to the observatory wall. Its edges are cracked, its center worn smooth by time. It reads, "When the lantern dims, the sky speaks in unlit tones. Listen not for color, but for breath." What exactly this meant, no one can say. But the astronomer scribes believed the lantern reacted to the world's deeper moods, to the hush before an upheaval, to the quiet grief of a land awaiting change, to the sighs of a people hidden behind silence. On mornings when the lantern glowed bright, even under storm-heavy skies, they celebrated, for it meant the cosmos still poured its messages freely into the waiting dawn. On mornings when its light barely stirred, they waited instead, hands resting gently upon the stone tables, as if comforting a friend who had grown too tired to speak. We follow the lantern now into a chamber where the walls curve inward like the hollow of a great shell. Here, dust coats every surface like pale snow. The air smells of stone, stillness, and memory. The lantern floats in the quiet, suspended by a rusted chain that no longer touches the ceiling. Its glow circles outward in soft pulses, illuminating carvings of star patterns and sunrises etched into the chamber walls. They once called this room the Dawn Archive, a place where every morning's message was recorded in careful strokes. The writings remain faintly visible still, lines that curve and bend like wind-caught scrolls. Their meaning is indecipherable now, though some symbols repeat spirals, closed eyes, gentle waves, crescents marked by the moon. It is said the astronomers believed dawn carried the breath of the world. They believed its first light could reveal truths the night preferred to keep hidden. But they also believed that such truths were never meant to be fully understood, only honored. The lantern drifts softly, as though remembering. As we continue the journey through long-abandoned halls, shadows gather in corners like sleeping thoughts. The lantern's glow brushes the stones, awakening glimmers trapped for centuries. In one chamber, we find a tall window carved to frame the horizon perfectly, though the sky beyond is now obscured by dust and time. This was the astronomers' favored place, their quiet refuge. Here, they greeted the first blush of light every morning. Here, they whispered their gratitude to the sky. Here, the lantern shone brightest, reflecting dawn's tender music in its glass heart. But like all sanctuaries, this one met its own twilight. No record remains of what happened. Perhaps the kingdom fell to time alone. Perhaps the storms grew heavier, morning after morning, until dawn itself could no longer pierce the horizon. Perhaps the astronomers simply drifted away like memories carried by wind. What remains is silence, and a lantern whose glow wavers between worlds, neither flame nor dream, neither living nor lost. We return toward the center of the observatory. The walls rise around us like guardians carved from dusk. The lantern rests atop a stone pedestal cracked down the center. Its light pulses once, twice, then settles into a soft, enduring shimmer. It does not brighten. It does not fade. It simply waits. Perhaps for someone who still believes that dawn carries meaning. Perhaps for the sky to speak again. Or perhaps for nothing at all, content to hold the memory of light as long as the world remembers how to breathe. As we step away, we feel the lantern's glow brush our backs a tender farewell, not a plea. Outside, the ruined kingdom lies under an expanse of drifting clouds. Somewhere above, beyond what eyes can see, dawn continues its silent ritual, rising and setting, carrying messages no longer recorded, meanings no longer traced. Yet the lantern remains, quiet, patient, a vessel of forgotten mornings. And as we leave this ancient sanctuary behind, one thought lingers, soft as the edge of sleep. Perhaps dawn never truly dies. Perhaps it only drifts where silence listens longest. The pathway between two dreams, it is said that high in a mountain range, where the wind moves like a living hymn, there lies a path whispered about in more legends than maps. A path suspended between worlds, where clouds drift not only as weather, but as memory sheets of pale white unfolding across the sky like ancient scrolls, unrolling themselves for any soul patient enough to look. Here, in this high and sacred solitude, begins the quiet story of the pathway between two dreams. Whispers tell us that this narrow walkway was once a threshold tended by a people who believed that dreams were not mere wanderings of sleep, but gateways, portals into the deeper architecture of reality. To them, waking life was simply one dream among many, fragile and temporary as a breath against cold glass. What they tended in these heights was not a passage of stone, but a passage of meaning. The chapter begins with a figure, a traveler unnamed, unhurried, shaped more from mist than memory, placing a foot onto the first stone of the path. From this vantage point, where the world curves away in every direction, they cannot tell whether they are ascending toward the sky or descending into some hidden fold of the mountain. The walkway tilts in both directions at once, and the horizon refuses to choose a place to rest. The air is thin, scented with frost and quiet. Clouds drift past like thoughts not yet complete. The stones are smooth beneath the traveler's feet, warm with a subtle pulse, as though echoing the footsteps of pilgrims long forgotten. The path itself is narrow no wider than 2 hands placed side by side. On one side lies a drop into cloud-soft nothingness. On the other rises a wall of weathered rock, veiled in spirals of moss and dust collected by the wind. But there is no fear here, only an uncanny stillness, the kind that settles inside the heart rather than the air. As the traveler continues, carved markers appear along the stone wall. They are not inscriptions, not exactly. Each one depicts a scene carved with exquisite detail: a mountain, a resting figure, a star-marked pool. Yet every time the traveler looks away and back, the scenes shift. What was a pool becomes an oceanic horizon. What was a mountain becomes a great, spiraling cloud. The images overlap and dissolve like layered dreams, each one a veil lifted only to reveal another beneath. It is said the ancient caretakers of this trail believed the waking world existed only because 2 dreams touched at the edges, forming a frontier neither fully sky nor fully earth. They carved these shifting scenes to remind travelers that nothing seen is ever fully settled. Reality is not fixed. Meaning is not singular. A dream is a doorway, not a destination. Somewhere along the path, the traveler pauses. The stones glow faintly underfoot, a warmth rising from deep within the mountain itself. A warmth not of fire, but of presence, as though the very path is aware of being walked upon, as though every step awakens a memory buried beneath layers of earth and starlight. Beneath the silence, a faint hum lingers, a tone carried by the mountain wind. It is impossible to tell if it comes from above or below. The traveler breathes, and the mist around them shivers like fabric stirred by a gentle hand. Where memory fades, another marker appears, carved in the shape of 2 overlapping spirals. The one on the left is shallow, curving outward like a seashell left by an ocean long vanished. The one on the right is deeper, almost sharp, its grooves filled with pale dust. Together, they seem to tremble, as though one belongs to earth and the other to sky, and the line between them is never quite steady. It is said the spiral was sacred to the people who shaped this place. To them, the spiral was the symbol of transition, not movement forward or backward, but inward. A path that curved deeper into the self, deeper into the dream, deeper into the unseen. The traveler reaches out to touch the spiral. For a moment, the stone feels warm. For a moment, it feels like touching someone else's memory. Beyond this point, the path narrows further, curling around a ridge where clouds rise from the valley like steam rising from a sleeping giant. The world grows brighter, though the sun remains hidden behind veils of drifting white. The traveler cannot see more than a few steps ahead. Yet, every stone feels steady beneath their feet, guided by countless forgotten footsteps. Here the air changes. It thins into something almost weightless, traveler feels as though they are stepping not on stone, but onto the boundary of a dream, a membrane between what is remembered and what is possible. Along the wall, the markers grow more intricate. One shows a figure holding a lantern filled with stars. Another shows two mountains touching at their peaks like clasped hands. Another shows an archway dissolving into mist, revealing nothing beyond. But the most striking is a scene depicting the path itself, but split into two. One version ascending into clouds, the other descending into the mountain's heart. The carvings flicker subtly, as though deciding which version of the path the traveler is currently on. The traveler breathes once more. The mist gathers gently around their shoulders, as if embracing them. The people who once tended this sacred walkway believed that every dream had two halves, one that faces the earth, heavy with memory, sorrow, and desire, and one that faces the sky, light with possibility, silence, and wonder. To walk this path was to walk between those halves, to feel their tug like twin tides. Further along, the stones begin to emit a soft vibration, barely perceptible, a resonance that matches the traveler's heartbeat, the hummed echo of all who walked before. It rises in the soles of their feet, then up through their ribs, settling behind their lungs like a second breath. It is a feeling not of movement, but of being moved. The path widens at last into a small circle carved into the mountainside. In the center stands a stone arch, tall, elegant, and unmarked. No inscription, no symbol, no guiding star. Its simplicity is breathtaking. The arch stands not as a doorway, but a question, a threshold carved for those who dare to consider crossing, but who know instinctively that such a task is not required. The traveler steps toward it. Mist drifts through the archway, rising and falling like a slow breath. On one side of the arch lies the waking world, full of shape, color, and weight. On the other side lies something softer, undefined, a dream not yet chosen. The traveler hesitates, not out of fear, out of reverence. Some thresholds are meant to be crossed. Others are meant simply to be acknowledged. And still others exist to remind us that the line between one world and another is thinner than moonlight on water. The traveler stands beneath the arch, neither stepping through nor stepping back. The moment stretches, timeless as frost on stone. High above, the clouds shift, revealing a sliver of pale moonlight. Marked by the moon, the arch seems to glow faintly, as though honoring the presence of one who has reached this sacred boundary. In the gentle hush that follows, the mountain breathes. The traveler closes their eyes, and the path waits with patient, ancient silence. When their eyes open again, the traveler turns and begins walking back the way they came. The arch remains behind, quiet and eternal, holding its place between two dreams. As the traveler descends or ascends, for here it is impossible to say, the mist curls around the path once more, veiling the walkway, softening each memory of the journey until it becomes something dreamlike, something gentle, something barely held. The story ends with the path disappearing into cloud, and with the soft understanding that some journeys are not meant to reach a conclusion, but to bring the traveler to the edge of a question and leave them there in peace. The Hall of Vanishing Footsteps. It is said that within the crumbled heart of an ancient palace, a structure once revered for its sacred libraries and star-marked chambers, there lies a hallway where even the dust refuses to remember. Beneath the silence of its moon-poured arches, footsteps vanish the moment they are made, leaving its white stone floors as unblemished as untouched snow. Some believe the hall was enchanted. Others whisper that it was built as a rebuke to human pride, a reminder that the world forgets more than it keeps. But the old manuscripts, the ones written in the ink of dusk and preserved in veiled alcoves, tell another story entirely. They speak of an order whose deepest devotion was absence of brotherhood and sisterhood, who believed the truest wisdom left no imprint. Tonight, the moon hangs low, and its pale radiance spills through a fractured rooftop of the palace like a blessing, or perhaps a warning. Its soft glow casts silver echoes across the corridor's length, illuminating each polished stone with celestial clarity. It is here that our chapter begins, in this corridor too pristine for the world it belongs to. The Hall of Vanishing Footsteps stretches far beyond what the eye expects, and though its walls have crumbled in places, the floor remains impossibly perfect. Not a trace of the centuries of wanderers, invaders, scholars, or curious pilgrims who passed through remains. Only the stillness endures, that vast, ancient stillness that feels older than memory itself. Beneath the silence, the air holds a faint oceanic coolness, as though the corridor exhaled something deep and buried. Dust gathers on ledges, clings to murals, softens the outlines of carved figures, yet the ground remains untouched. No matter how long one stands, no matter how many steps one takes, the dust refuses to settle at their feet. Whispers tell us the secret order who built this hall practiced the art of the silent passage. They believed wisdom flowed from humility, and humility flowed from invisibility. To live without leaving a trace was their highest calling. They trained for decades in the hall, learning to move as though part of the air drifting, ungraspable, unremembered. As we walk deeper, the first murals emerge from shadow. Faded by time, yet still holding a sort of dreamlike clarity, they show figures dissolving into the horizon. Their outlines grow lighter the farther they travel, as if each step frees them from the weight of form. In some scenes, whole groups of these pilgrims appear to be evaporating into dust, their bodies becoming spirals of soft light. In others, only a single figure remains, a silhouette fading to near transparency, hand raised in a gesture of farewell to a world that will not remember them. The deeper we go, the more the corridor seems to listen. It absorbs sound the way sand absorbs water. Each step is swallowed instantly, leaving behind not even an echo. The sensation is unsettling, as though one has been removed from the world's attention. The very air behaves differently here, dense and soft, muting breath and movement alike. Even the moonlight, which spills generously at the hall's entrance, fades gently as though hesitant to disturb the sanctity of the place. Where memory fades, the order believed, truth becomes clearer. They sought this purity, this place where identity dissolved and left the mind unburdened. Yet the hall feels less like a sanctuary for enlightenment and more like a shrine to erasure. Every corner suggests absence. Every shadow feels stretched thin, as if remembering ghosts who no longer exist. We continue, drawn forward by a faint shimmer in the center of the hall. There, resting alone upon the flawless stone, lies something impossible. A footprint, just one, perfectly preserved, untouched by time or dust. A simple impression of a bare human foot, gently pressed into the polished floor long ago. It should not exist. The hall does not allow memory. The hall refuses imprint. And yet here it is soft around the edges, shallow, humble, but undeniably present. It is said the footprint belonged to the last member of the order, a wandering philosopher who questioned whether total vanishing was truly a gift. Perhaps they believed that one mark, one single breath of remembrance, could anchor their teachings beyond obscurity. Or perhaps, as other stories insist, the footprint is not a mark of rebellion, but of mercy. A final blessing left for those who still need to know that they are not entirely forgotten. Standing above it, we see that the moonlight has found its way along the corridor, just enough to rest on the print. Its pale glow fills the impression like water in a quiet cup. The surrounding stone remains untouched by dust or shadow, but the footprint shines softly, as though marked by the moon itself. The murals near it change subtly. Figures who once seemed to dissolve now appear to turn back, gazing over their shoulders with faint, sorrowful expressions. Their outlines are still fading, but their eyes are open, the only open eyes in the entire hall. They gaze upon the footprint as if it is the last tether to a world they once walked. As we linger, the hall seems to shift around us. The perfect polished floor feels warmer beneath our feet, as if holding the memory of countless pilgrims who trained here. The air grows gentler, the silence more tender. What once felt like a warning begins to feel like an embrace. It is then we realize the truth hidden beneath the silence. This hall was never meant to erase for the sake of forgetting. It was meant to teach the beauty of humility, and the beauty, too, of a single, chosen memory. The order did not vanish because they despised the world. They vanished because they believed the world needed quiet places where one could walk without being pursued by the noise of identity. And yet one of them, whether by accident or devotion, left behind this single trace, this soft imprint, to remind the future that presence and absence are both sacred. As we walk back toward the moonlit entrance, the corridor seems to sigh a gentle, echo-free exhalation. The murals fade into deeper shadow, the air cools, and the silence returns to its perfect, enveloping stillness. We step past the threshold, letting the night wind greet us. Behind us, the hall lies in pristine quiet, holding its single footprint like a whispered confession. And as the moon climbs higher, its light brushes the hall once more, neither erasing the footprint nor illuminating it fully, just lingering as though unsure which truth deserves to remain. Some things, after all, are meant to endure softly. Some messages survive not in sound or stone, but in the delicate hush that follows. And so the chapter closes with a breath of uncertainty, not fear, but wonder, inviting us to question whether the footprint is an accident, a vow, or a message left for anyone willing to walk the corridor and feel what the silent order learned long ago: that a step can vanish, yet still echo